If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu-Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Armin Fati, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there were so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Today's guest is trained with the best of the best and is here to discuss the things people don't know about opening a Jiu-Jitsu academy, priorities in Jiu-Jitsu training, rule sets, and why, even though he trains mostly Nogi, the importance of training both gi and Nogi. Here is Matt Serra, black belt, content creator for BJJ Fanatics, a man who has trained extensively with John Danaher, and owner and instructor at Vanguard Academy in Lake Grove, New York, Jason Rao.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live. Here we go. We're getting closer and closer to the episode 200.
Yeah, it's right around the corner.
Yeah, as we're creeping up to this, we have Jason. Jason, how are you? Thanks for joining us from the East Coast. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Awesome. I just heard, and I don't know if I should or shouldn't I say this, but you had staff meeting just right before this.
I did. Yes, I did. For my gym. Yeah.
The necessities of running the academy.
Yes. It was quick. It was only about 20 minutes.
Oh, geez.
We try to run them, at least once every couple of weeks. But we don't have a huge staff right now, but trying to do the best we can with the business. So it's been successful so far. So
I would love a 20-minute meeting. Hour and 20 is usually our pace.
Jason, what you don't know, I'm a meeting guy. I like collaborations. they tend to stretch out when I'm in them. But but everything is good at the academy. Staff is good. You're good. Everything is. Nobody got fired.
Good. No one got fired. No. Thankfully, but everything's good. My gym is going really well. So I'm very fortunate.
You've been on the mat for a while, over a decade. Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
Absolutely.
Have you thought about, the fact that, 10 or 14 plus years ago when you were exploring this opportunity, we'll get to the beginnings in a moment, but has that crossed your mind 14 years ago that you are going to be a business owner and you're going to have such a tremendous impact on people who step through your doors?
I kind of knew early on that I wanted to own a gym one day. I didn't know anything about owning a gym. I didn't know what that would look like. Kind of for me at the time, it was, it was like, okay, I love jiu-jitsu. You can't really make a great living, especially back then doing jiu-jitsu. Now things have changed a little bit, but that kind of seemed like the obvious choice. Okay, one day I'm going to open a gym. I didn't really, at the time, I didn't really think about what you just described, like having a big impact on people, potentially changing people's lives, like, changing my students' lives. That's something I definitely think about more now. But, I kind of knew one day I want to have a gym, or hope I can have a gym one day. And, I'm very happy with the way that has manifested in my life and the way things have turned out.
Regrets?
Regrets? I don't think so. No, I don't have. I could say maybe regret not opening a gym sooner.
Oh,
Because I opened my gym at Vanguard Academy in New York. Me and my partner Nick Ronan, we opened August of 2022. So it's coming up on 2 years. Definitely taking that plunge to doing that is a little nerve-wracking and stressful, and I think I could have done it sooner and been just as successful. I'm obviously happy the way things worked out, but I think I could have probably done it sooner. And I don't want to say regret. I don't like to say regret.
yeah. No, but I know what you mean. Opening a business is a huge step. I mean, that's you putting yourself in a huge point of vulnerability. Like,
Absolutely,
you don't know what's going to happen if this thing flunks. Like, your livelihood is on the line, right? I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
That's a big risk to take. Why do you think you could have done it sooner?
I think I mean, one, like, in terms of my ability to teach jiu-jitsu and skill wise, I think I was at that point for a while. I think in my head I didn't like you just described, like I was very comfortable with the status quo of like where I was in terms of like I was teaching for Matt Serra. I was financially pretty comfortable in that position. Didn't have a huge, I don't want to say I didn't have a huge drive to grow, but I didn't realize how much more successful I could be than I was doing at the time. And kind of once I got into it, I was like, oh wow, this could really go quite a long way. And I mean, I feel like until you're out on your own and you have a business, you kind of like can I do this? Is this the right choice? And then once you're there, you're like, man, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. It's kind of it was like a little bit of a mentality shift.
Do you think that the fact of teaching for somebody else gives us this point of comfort where we just show up, we teach, we have a responsibility, but let's be honest, the responsibility is very different than actually owning a gym or owning a business.
It's very different. I mean, I love teaching for Matt. I did it for many years. Like, I love Matt. Matt, he's a close friend of mine. I definitely look back on those days teaching there with obviously if I go way back to when I first started training, I've always been under Matt Serra. Definitely look back even a couple of years ago with a little bit of nostalgia. It's definitely it was a different time in my life. My life looks drastically different now. Obviously I still love jiu-jitsu. I still train jiu-jitsu, with a lot of intent and intensity, but it's kind of it was much more carefree in terms of what the things outside of just being on the mat every day look like.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people go through this, especially in the upper ranks, brown, black belt. There is a certain appealing factor. There's certain desire to have your own academy. And I think that even starts sooner, probably around purple belt, I would love to have my own academy. But we don't realize what really takes to have one.
It's very true, yeah.
Right? And then this thing flips kind of the opposite direction. The moment we have one, we are noticing how comfortable things were, just showing up to whatever X amount of classes, teaching, and you are still responsible. You're a phenomenal instructor. You're making impact. But the fact of owning that business is definitely not there. That's somebody else's problem, not yours.
Yeah, very different.
Right? Why do you think that we have this desire, yet we disregard this fact of, this could be actually harder?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, they have a passion for jiu-jitsu. They say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, right?
The biggest lie in the world.
Yeah. You've heard that statement. I mean, while that's not entirely true, I mean, I do feel very fortunate that this is my livelihood, and I'm able to make a successful career out of that. I sometimes have to remind myself that if I had to walk into a 9-to-5 career, I think I wouldn't be able to handle it. I would not be able to do it, given how my life has gone doing jiu-jitsu. But I think people have that mentality, but then there's like anything, there's it's not all play, no work. There's going to be a combination. You're going to have to do things that you don't want to do like you would with any other job or any other career path that you choose. And not that people don't realize that. I think just like I don't want to say fairy tale, but kind of the idea of, okay, I'm going to open a gym. It's going to be so great. I'm going to love my job every day. It's not always going to be like that, right? And not to say I don't love my life, because I absolutely do. But there's parts of owning a gym that are difficult, and sometimes not that I would ever want this permanently, but I'm always, every time I go to another gym, I'm either teaching there or going to my gym, I'm teaching. Sometimes it might be nice just to walk into a gym, take the class, train, not worry about anything, not cleaning the mats, just leaving right after and not having to think about anything else. And for me, that's like a position I haven't been in for many, 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 many years. And not that I would ever want it to not be the way it is now, but that's like something I miss about training, like just being able to show up at the academy, take class, leave, and like that's all jiu-jitsu is. It's just a hobby,
One of our guests, and I don't recall who it was exactly, but we had a guest here who said, you can love jiu-jitsu as much as, then it could be your life. There should be a lot of passion, but it's still a job. Like, you still need to show up. You still need to, and that alone, that responsibility, carrying on your back, the commitment to deliver for your students has a lot of weight on every instructor, and even the business owner particularly, right?
I agree. Yeah, I mean, you have to continuously, try to put your best foot forward and deliver, the best product you can to your students. Absolutely.
What was the biggest surprise so far in these 2 years?
Biggest surprise, I would say, I don't want to say surprise, because I kind of knew, but it's almost like, I feel like it's almost like you have like sort of like a baby, you're like so concerned about all these, I don't want to say mundane things, but like seemingly each individual thing is like not a big deal, but like when you collaborate them together, it can become like a bit overwhelming at times. That's at least the way I think about it. Like running the gym outside of like teaching the classes, like that is for me the easiest thing, because I've just done it for so long. I can, do that very comfortably, no stress involved whatsoever. But some of the other things, like the back end stuff, it's all like little individual tasks that by themselves are not difficult to do, but it's like many little tasks that have to be done on a consistent basis. It's not like any one major thing that's gonna, I mean, similar to, I'm sure there's many things in life that are like that, but it's not gonna be any one major thing you do that's gonna make or break the success of the business, but like small, seemingly mundane tasks that you have to do like every day or extremely consistently over, many weeks and months, that's going to, like make or break the success of your business. So like the kind of the simpleness or mundaneness of certain things that just have to be done very, very consistently. It's kind of, I don't want to say surprised me, but it's not like what I thought it would be kind of before I did it.
Do you think that is one of the reasons why some academies are extremely successful and others are just, mediocre in a sense from a business perspective?
I think so.
I mean, you look at like even Matt Serra or Hanzo Gracie, like New York, right by you, right? Or like Haja Gracie or Atos. I mean, you can name these, and they are, I mean, you're talking about thousands of students, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And then others, they have 20, 30 students, and they never go beyond that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's certainly some of the gyms you described, like obviously Hanzo Gracie has been open, I don't know how long, 25 years,
probably more
years
than that.
Maybe. I mean, it's same with Matt's gym has been open for so more than 20 years. So
they're almost like icons, right? I mean,
absolutely. And I think there's a few factors that determine the success of the business, like a few major factors. But the people you mentioned, Atos, these are like you said, icons within the sport, and like that certainly has a positive effect on their success as academies. But I don't think you need to be a Matt Serra or a Renzo Gracie to own a successful gym. Like, that's definitely not a requirement at all, I don't think. But you definitely would have to kind of do those other things I described, like more intently and more consistently, if you wanted to have a successful gym. Versus, and then this is not to say these like Renzo Gracie's or Matt Serra's or Achas doesn't do these things, but certainly like being that iconic place absolutely has its advantages.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember your first day on the mat?
I do, yes. So I remember my first day at Matt Serra's, and I remember my first day trying jiu-jitsu. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Long Island, but I had a friend that went to Hofstra University, which is just a university like right in the middle of Long Island, and it was right down the block from Matt Serra's gym, maybe 10, 15 minute drive. And my friend went to Hofstra, and he had done the jiu-jitsu club, and he told me like I should come try it. And the club was taught by a blue belt under Matt Serra. So like it was like a college club, and this blue belt ran the club.
And for those who don't know, what year is this? Because I think
this is 2009.
2009.
So this is like December 2000, like right before Christmas. And I went to this club. I did one session, and like I absolutely loved it because I kind of wanted to do something anyway. Like to be honest, like I didn't really watch the UFC. I knew what the UFC was. Like I kind of heard Matt Serra's name, but I didn't know that he beat GSP. I didn't know any of this stuff. So I wanted to do some type of martial art. I actually looked at like a Krav Maga place. Like I almost did that instead because I didn't know anything. But I went here and it was because I had wrestled a little bit in high school, and it was like kind of similar to wrestling. And I was like, this is awesome. I loved it. And I did the one class, and then I went and signed up at Sarah's like the next week. It was, I was 20 at the time. Yeah, I was 20. So 2009. Yeah, so it was like end of 2009. And my parents, like as a Christmas gift, they like bought my first month for me at Sarah's. And I like went and literally signed up like the next week. It was, I think this was like the week before Christmas, I did this class. And then the week after I signed up. And so I started like technically 2009, but like the last week of 2009 I started.
So let's before you move on, I think there's some important things that you're mentioning here, which I think really dictates or show the changes throughout the jiu-jitsu evolution, if you will. One, you said that you know what UFC is, but you're not watching it. Did you know what jiu-jitsu is? Are you familiar with what
Not really, no.
Okay, so why are you seeking martial arts then?
Well, because I did wrestle a little bit in high school, and I kind of wanted to do some type of like combat sport, something similar. So, like but I didn't really understand. Like I thought like, karate or Krav Maga was like, that was like what you did if you did martial arts. Like I didn't really understand that there was like grappling martial arts and striking martial arts. Like obviously I knew what wrestling was, but I didn't think of wrestling's martial art without question, but I didn't think of it as that.
So would you consider that this is almost pure luck that you end up in jiu-jitsu?
I think it's luck that my friend told me to come down to this class. Yeah, because I would have like done something else instead. I was not like necessarily looking to do jiu-jitsu. I was looking to do some type of martial art. And he told me, he said, you should try this. This is awesome. Like this guy teaches at, or, is a blue belt under Matt Serra. And I didn't really know what that was. Then when I did it, the guy submitted me, obviously. Like, many people have had this experience, untrained, trained with a blue belt, get submitted a million times. Like, and I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. I have to learn this.
But this puts us in the interesting point here of this story, as you walk in and a blue belt is teaching.
Yes.
And for those who listen today, you walk into the academy and blue belt is teaching today.
Well, to be fair, this was a club at Hofstra University.
But still, like I feel like today that's uncommon situation.
Yeah,
and I think
so, yeah.
But I think what a lot of listeners don't realize that back in early 2000s or even late 2000s, finding a purple belt or brown belt teaching was not so common. I mean, like I remember, I mean, I started a little bit before you, but like I remember like if somebody was a blue belt, you're like, whoa, somebody's a purple belt. Oh, you treat them like almost like God. Like this is a skill that not many have achieved at that point of time.
Very true.
Today, the evolution has like all this evolved, right? And like a blue belt, everybody's a blue belt now, right? Like it's more common, right?
It's true. Yeah. I mean, when I first started going to Serra's after that, I mean, I remember like going in and they were warming up. And like I was sitting on the side and like I was gonna sign up at the desk. I didn't take class that day. Like I went and signed up and then I signed up that day and I took class the next day. But I remember it was a gi class and like there was this guy, it was a brown belt who was running the class, and like it was a brown belt under Matt Serra. Like, oh my God, this guy is legit. He's super good. And there was maybe one or two purple belts and it was a pretty big class. It was probably 25 guys. One or two purple belts in the class, a handful of blue belts, and then it was all white belts. So there was, and this was, Matt's gym, I think he opened his gym in 2000. So it had been around for 10 years now. So at this point, he had awarded, 2009, he probably had awarded like 6 or 7 black belts. Guys that maybe started with him at Henzo's and then came with him when he opened the gym, he had awarded a few black belts. Like now, Matt has like 175 black belts. Like it's like crazy because they do like a gathering every year, like not everyone shows up, of course, but like I was black belt number 51 or 52, and like now they're giving it out. They give out a certificate, like it's like 178. Once it just, it's crazy. It's obviously like a compounding effect. Like more and more people train, and as the years go on, like you could have more students. But anyway, so it was like my first day, and I'm like watching them warm up, and then like this one purple belt and a blue belt start training. And this purple belt, this guy's name is Billy Tats. Like everyone had on Long Island, everyone's a nickname. Like Billy Tats, he gets tattoos everywhere. I think he's a black belt now. I think he still trains, and he's like submitting this blue belt like over and over and over again. I had no idea what he was doing. It was a triangle, an arm bar, and I didn't know any of this stuff. But I was like so enthralled watching it. Like this is like I have to learn this stuff. This is amazing. I had already gone to that class and got destroyed by this guy. And I signed up and literally just went every single day.
Okay, so one more thing I want to know about this. I want to know what's in your head. One, you go to the class and a blue belt is teaching it, and you said he mops the floor with you. But then you're watching a brown belt who mops the floor with another blue belt. Like, are you connecting dots at that point that there's layers to all of this? And like,
yeah, I'm definitely like this person is like a god, like. And I even remember I got to train with a few brown belts my first week of training. I remember who both guys are, and I remember just being like totally like amazed. Not that like I wasn't the type of person who like thought I could fight. Like I was in good shape. I was I'd wrestle a little bit. Like I went to the gym every day. Like a lot of people that start jiu-jitsu, and I didn't think like I was like a badass or anything, but I was like blown away with like how good they were in comparison to me. And I wasn't like and this is even my first week. Like my first week, I was doing okay with some of the white belts, like, because I had the wrestling background. I was a younger guy. I would like the 1-2 stripe white belts. I would like hold my own. We'd do like King of the Hill, like from the guard. I would like come up and take them down. Like I would do pretty good. And then these guys were just so good. I just like couldn't believe it. It like totally blew my mind how good they were. And
so there was layers to all those, huh?
Yeah, I kind of realized pretty quickly. Like I was like, okay, like this is something. And I had never, not that I wasn't good at anything, but I never put that much work into. Like, obviously, like 14 years later, like I'm better at this than I am at anything else, obviously. But like I never at the time put that much work to get like super good at something, and I think this is kind of just an interesting thing. And no matter what it is, I think when somebody like puts, I don't know if you ever read the book Outliers, like 10,000 hour
phenomenal book.
Yeah, when you put like 10,000 hours into something, like it gives you an appreciation for like other disciplines. Like I mean, I put probably more than 10,000 hours into jiu-jitsu, and like I believe a very high level understanding of it, and like I can look at other disciplines and I really see like how deep those. Like I was playing chess recently. Like I don't really play that much, but I kind of got into it, for a little bit. And like if I was 20, like playing chess, like obviously I would understand. Okay, there's levels to this, but like being very good at something you really understand. You're like, I'm never going to be that good. Like, maybe you'll get to a blue belt level at chess, but like, I'm never going to be anywhere near as good at chess as I am at jiu-jitsu. You know, it kind of gives you for appreciation for people who are like truly experts in their field, like how much effort that really takes to be like that good at something.
Do you think that brings the point of or a level of humbleness to all of us, in a sense of, you know, oftentimes you see individuals starting jiu-jitsu, and there's at the very beginning, and it's sometimes there is this like this I know how to do things attitude, meaning they learn something and they want to teach, they're very open about this, versus when you look at the other classes or the other individuals who've been on the mat for 6, 7, 8 years, they are as helpful, but there's a level of humbleness.
I agree. Yeah.
Between them, simply, and I feel like sometimes it's simply sourcing from the fact that the guys who have been on the mat for longer, they know that there is so much more ahead versus what they've experienced so far.
Yeah. I mean,
would you agree with that?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, you know, definitely not everyone gets humbled, but I think a lot of people, I think anyone that's invested that much time in something like this, like especially a combat sport, has like received their fair share of like beatings and understands that there's like many levels to this, and you know, even if they're a purple belt or a brown belt, that there's many levels still above them, and it makes you humble knowing that, versus like, you know, not to say that everyone that comes in isn't humble, but there's, you know, often people that come in very confident and then get humbled quite quickly when they realize like how incapable they are.
And that's the beautiful thing about the mat or training jiu-jitsu. And many use this phrase, you know, mat is the equalizer in a sense. But it's like the guys who have this confidence oftentimes get humbled down in a sense and gaining this internal confidence. But the people who don't have confidence, because there's plenty of those coming into martial arts in general,
yes,
they gain that confidence.
They do.
I mean, have you had students who like you look at them their first day, first week, first man, and you're like, oh boy, this is gonna be a rough one. I mean, like,
yeah.
And then year or 2 or 3, 4 later, and they are like different people. They're completely transformed in a sense.
I mean, I think jiu-jitsu can truly change people's lives, like in the way you described, no question. I mean, even from, I mean, there's people that I, you know, started maybe similar time to me or a little bit after me, and they look like entirely like different, you know, just different people entirely today than they were at the time. Like you described, they've gained more confidence. Maybe they lost a lot of weight. You know, they really like shaped who they are as a person in a positive way many times. Even students I've had in my gym, you know, we haven't been open that long, but we had a guy lose like 80 pounds in the first 6 months. Like, you know, he was one of the first people we gave a blue belt to. Alex Reyes, I'll give him a shout out on here. But, you know, it's definitely seen it have like huge impact, positive impact on people's lives. Like I would feel like the same about myself. Not that I don't think I was unconfident, you know, or anything going in, but I was pretty like, you know, average guy. And like, this is my whole career and like, you know, huge part of my life right now. And I would have never imagined it would have turned out that way for myself.
You said that you weren't good at much before jiu-jitsu. Did it seem?
I don't want to say I wasn't good at much, but like I wasn't like I grew up playing baseball. I was a pretty good baseball player. But what I'm really describing is like I had never invested nearly as much time into something as I would invest in jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense.
So did that investment come about naturally, or was it a decision like, if I want to get good at this, I know I have to put this time in?
It was initially like kind of came naturally just because I enjoyed doing it so much. You know, I just trained every day. I trained as much as I possibly could when I first started because I like truly loved doing it. And then, you know, as I started to compete and, you know, kind of realized like, okay, I want to, you know, maybe open a gym one day. I want to, you know, I want to compete at a high level. Then like, you know, then you start kind of changing the way you view things. Okay, like I don't want to train today, but I'm going to train because I have competition coming up. That's everything. Then it becomes a little bit more deliberate. But like the initial passion was just, you know, because I wanted to do it, not because I had a specific goal in mind or anything like that. But
do you think that casual training, like take the competition aside, take the desirable goals, the tangible goals that we might set out for ourselves, semi-pro or even amateur, just take them aside. Just casual training. I come in once, twice, 3 times a week at the most.
Sure.
I have a professional job. I have family. Jiu-Jitsu on my priority list is somewhere there. It's kind of cool to hang out. Do you think that those guys can be successful in Jiu-Jitsu?
I guess it depends on what you mean by successful. I mean,
Right.
I think they can, I think someone like that can certainly achieve a black belt, like no question. Obviously, it may take them a little bit longer than someone who's training 6 days a week, but I mean, I guess it determines, again, what your parameter of success is. Like, can that person
Well, let me rephrase. Would you see somebody like achieve a certain level of success, a knowledge base, something that is tangible in jiu-jitsu, training with a very casual approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that depends on, are they at a school with like a good curriculum, good instructors that's like, kind of guiding them correctly, but I think they absolutely could. I mean, again, they're never as, unless it's a very talented or, extraordinary person, never as fast as someone who's putting in a lot of time. But I think someone with that like level of frequency of training could absolutely, achieve, a solid level of understanding and technical application of jiu-jitsu and, earn a black belt one day and, be a good grappler. I think there's no reason someone like that can't do that. And again, like you described, it may not be high on their priority list. Like, they have a family, kids, a full-time job, but they could still, experience very, very positive results from doing that, and not just like in your ability to, do jiu-jitsu or grapple, not being a good, but just like, positive mental benefits, positive physical benefits. I think, there's no reason someone can't do that. I do think people, because when you go to a gym, you're taking class and you're, quote unquote, competing against your peers. Like you're live training with your peers. Like someone comes in and I mean, it's just a natural thing. Like, okay, I'm rolling with Gary. I'm rolling with Thomas. Like we're pretty close. Like maybe I'm better in this position. He's better in that position. And we're kind of right there with each other. Like all of a sudden, like Gary shoots past me. Like it's natural to say, oh man, like he's just beating me. Like he's coming 6 days a week. I'm coming 3 days a week. Let me try to get an additional day or two in. Like I think that type of thing happens, and which is why you see people like get like hyper obsessive with this type of sport. But I think there's also people who like, and I think it's important to understand that, if you're someone that's training 1 or 2 days a week, you can absolutely improve. And it's kind of cliche to say this, but like, try not to compare yourself to the guy that's coming 6 days a week. It's just, it's
well, but cliche or not cliche, but there is a lot of truth behind this, right? I mean, I feel like after teaching for so many years, I feel like that's one of the biggest and first mistakes that we make as humans. We compare ourselves to the guy next to us. And like 1, our physical abilities could be different. 2, the way how we process information. And many consider jiu-jitsu is more mentally stimulating than physically stimulating. So like that's a big component behind this. 3, the amount of time and effort we put into this. Like somebody who trains twice a week and turns off jiu-jitsu, that's one thing. But somebody who trains twice a week and then watches another 4 hours of instructional videos, the result is going to be very different, isn't it?
Very true. It's very true. Yeah. I mean, I say that to my students a lot. Like a lot of your success comes outside of the training room. Even if it's as simple as on your ride home, thinking about, what you could have done differently in your roles, like where you went right, where you went wrong. I think that's extremely important in the learning process.
Why do you think that reflection is so important? Because I 100% share this, and this is like a repeating speech to all my conversation with my students. It's like, reflect on what you've done, draw positive, find points of improvements, come back with a plan, really reflect on what is happening and what you're trying to do, and this is where you get improved. That's where you get better.
Yeah.
But why do you think that really matters? Why can't we just show up, do what instructor tells us to do, and go home?
I mean, I'll say this. I think a jiu-jitsu gym is it's not designed to get people, just 99% of academies are not designed to get people as good at jiu-jitsu as possible. Like it's most of them are designed with like their businesses. Like, so for example, like if I wanted to like get my students as good as possible, like I couldn't have as many students as I have. I can't possibly, like give individualized attention to everybody. Like, I teach the class, like I make sure everyone's doing the move to the best of my ability, but like I'm not teaching I'm teaching to the masses, if that makes sense. Like,
Yes.
so I think the structure of a jiu-jitsu academy is not with the intent of making people as good as possible. Like, it's making people as good as possible while still appealing to a broad enough population to make sure the academy stays in business, right? Like that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like, versus like something like a college wrestling practice or a high school wrestling practice, like you're directly training for competition. So I'm going a little off topic here, but directly training for competition, and those people are going out, and like no one's doing high school wrestling to not go wrestle matches, right? So like the intent of the practice is a little bit harder, and it's a little bit different than like a jiu-jitsu practice. So going back to what you said about like getting people better, I'm sorry, go back to what you said about like why do you have to be thinking about what you're doing and have intent behind what you're doing, is because when you come to practice, you have to realize that like what your coach is teaching you, not to say it's not right, it's probably great and it's probably useful, but it may not be directly applicable to your game or to what your needs are as a grappler or as a practitioner. So like you need to have like you need to have an honest assessment of, okay, like this movement, I'm going to practice this movement, like whatever that movement is, but also like I am very strong in this position or I'm not good in this position. I need to like be also working on things outside of what we're doing in class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on this, 100%. Somebody told me at some point that group instruction is not even close to one-on-one coaching, and oftentimes those are misunderstood. Coach is not the same thing as instructor.
Yes.
Right. So even like you look at other sports, like most of professional athletes, they'll have a head coach whose job is to direct the whole team into specific direction with a specific objective. But then all of them have personal coaches or personal guys, personal trainers, right? That you work on this, you work on this, you work on this. And I think oftentimes that might be misunderstood. Like when you come to a class of, 10, that's a small class, but 25, 30, 40 people in the class, the one instructor, it's physically incapable of giving everybody an attention more than a couple minutes per class. Like it's physically impossible to do this, right? So like, I think what you're describing is that there are different ways of learning, right? Like there is this group class, which gives us this community stimulation. You're hanging out with your bodies, you're testing things, you're in a class, right? But there's also things like one-on-one lessons, which that's going to have a very different,
of course,
strategic approach, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I took someone that was training 2 days a week and I was like, okay, I want to get you as good as possible at jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't say go take 2 classes. I would do something like, this is assuming I could have one-on-one time with the person. I would do some type of positional training. I would do some type of drilling. I would structure their training program to get them as good as possible. But that's not something you can do to a group like you described of 20, 25 people. If I had my singular goal was to get people as good as possible, like I couldn't have an academy with 300 students. Like it just wouldn't work. Like I would have to take 10 or 15 students and, only train those students, like, which is not feasible as a gym or a business owner. Like this is why you have something like Team New Wave, like John Danaher doesn't have to think about any of those things. His goal is to get those athletes as good as possible. And if someone comes and the class doesn't work out for them and they leave, it doesn't matter, versus, it's a little bit different when you're like, but
at the same time, those opportunities do exist for students, with one-on-one and private lesson and things of that nature, right? It's just obviously that's often associated with additional cost and specific timelines, right? And but those opportunities do exist.
No, they do, absolutely. And but going back to what you said, like that person is going to have to invest additional time or funds. Like if I'm a 2-day-a-week type of guy, and I've been training 2 days a week for a couple of years, and I want to up my game, obviously a private lesson, that's a great way to do that. But now we're starting to up our time investment,
Yeah.
versus,
Yep.
okay, I'm sticking.
But all of this boils down to what you asked me is what's the objective? What's the goal?
Exactly.
Like what defines the success?
Yeah.
Right?
So
Because I have plenty of students who have no desire to be world champions. They have no desire to even compete. They simply want to come, train a couple times a week. They want to socialize. They want to make friends. They want to lose a couple stunts. They stay sane in a sense and maybe disconnect from the craziness of life. And that's all they want. They don't want anything else.
That's totally acceptable. Obviously, jiu-jitsu can be a lot of things for different people, and I think I've seen plenty of students like that over the years, and many of those students went on to get their black belts, and not to say they're not, they're not going to be as good as the 6 day a week like competitor guy, but it doesn't mean they're not getting anything out of jiu-jitsu or not getting as much as the next guy out of it.
Phenomenal. At some point of your career, you made a decision for the preference of no-gi versus gi. And, this was one of the reasons why I was excited about this conversation, because oftentimes that decision comes in for a lot of students, depending on where they train, what their desires are, what the academy offers. There's a lot of dynamics behind this. Mm-hmm. But at some point during this 10-year of training, we make that preference switch one way or another. And we still might train the other one, but we have the favorite.
Yep, of course.
What was the day, or was there one, where you were like,
so I will say, when I first started training, we only had at Serra's, even though Matt's obviously former UFC champion, like ADCC, silver medalist, more of probably like a no-gi credentialed guy himself. We only had like one no-gi day a week.
He was primarily gi for a long time.
For a long time before, really. But so when I first started, it was only gi, and then Saturdays was no gi. But pretty much every day I trained in the gi, and I would say from white belt up until I got my white. I started in 2010. I got my black belt in 2016. I would say that first portion of training was probably 80% gi for me, 75 to 80% gi. Like I competed in the Worlds a few times in the gi. I was like much more gi focused, and kind of like I was at like a point where I was like, okay, like I really want to take this very seriously. I want to make this my career. At that point, I was working at the gym. I was teaching. I was like working the desk and stuff. Like, what is going to like give me the best chance to do that? And this was at the time when like Gordon Ryan, Gary Tony, Eddie Cummings, like the original DDS guys were kind of starting to come up. And like just the natural like proximity to being to New York City, being on Long Island, and because Matt Serra is a Renzo Gracie black belt, he had a good relationship with John Danaher. They're still friends to this day. It just seemed like the natural place to go train. Like it was like, okay, could I go? Like if I want to be the best gi competitor in the world, am I going to go to Unity or Marcelo's, or am I going to stay in the family and go to Renzo's? It was a kind of like that type of question I asked myself. I'm sure I could have gone and trained at Unity or Marcelo's. It would not have been like a issue in Matt's mind at all. Like he's not like that at all. But it was just like, okay, it just seemed like the most natural path. And then when I started like learning leg locks, like I really liked them, and you can't really do them in the gi the same way. You can't do heel hooks or reaps or whatever. So like it just like became the natural like gravitation for me at that point.
So do you remember that first day with that squad, or you go like do you see the difference going from primarily gi training to now shifting over to this semi-pro, if not pro? I mean, there was no pro at that time. I think there was like the early days, right? But their focus was to be pro.
Yeah.
Right.
So
is there a difference between training between those two groups?
So I'd always known who John Danaher was. He had come to Serra's a few times and taught some seminars, like when I was like a blue and purple belt. And periodically, I would go train at Renzo's. Like I had a friend, his name was Eric Sherman. He teaches at Renzo's to this day. He's a black belt now, but he was like always a little bit ahead of me in the belt ranks. He was like a brown belt when I was a blue belt, and he had medaled at the Worlds in the gi. Like, so he was like one of my first like mentors when I was coming up. And he was originally from Long Island, and he moved to the city, and he started training at Henzo's under John Danaher. This is when Gianni Grippo was still at Henzo, so like him and Gianni were training partners, and he would always tell me, like, John Danaher is an amazing instructor, like, you have to come in here. So periodically, like, over the years, like maybe once or twice a year, I would like go into Henzo's on like, on like the Memorial Day Monday class, like something along those lines. So I always knew who he was, and I was always like amazed by like how good of an instructor he was. Like, I still can remember going in there and like in like 2013, like him showing like a series of like 3 triangle defenses, and I still like remember it to this day, like how clear it was. Still something I use, and it was like like I call it like immediately actionable. He would like teach a move, and I could like use it like that very day. I would like add it into my game. It was just a great instructor. And so then when like Gordon and Gary and Eddie started coming up, like they were under John Danaher, so I knew who John was, and I started like studying them, and this is when I kind of started doing more Nogi. I started studying them and trying to learn heel hooks, and this is before I was really training there. And then like one day I was just kind of like, why am I doing this on my own? Like, I have to, like, these guys are right here, and obviously spoke to Matt, and he was cool with it, and I went into Henzo's, and just I went in periodically. 2016 I would go like once a week, and then I just like switched to going every day. I kind of was just like, I need to be here. This is like where the sport is kind of moving, and like I want to, be training.
Do you miss gi?
I mean, so I'll say this: up until I opened my gym, I would still train in the gi 3 days a week, 2-3 days a week. I like the gi a lot. At my gym, I still do train in the gi, but we don't have like a huge like advanced gi program, so more of my training is no gi. I like the gi. Like I
What is so appealing about it? I was not expecting that answer from you, to be honest with you. I thought you would tell me that gi kind of
I mean, I've always
dissolved in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say this: I think the sport as a competitive sport is moving towards no-gi.
No doubt.
No doubt.
I mean, especially professionally, right?
Professionally, yeah.
I mean, between ADCC and individual fight type of structure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it's going.
Yeah, and no-gi was like and again, going back to what you asked originally, like if I had been in like California, San Diego, and trained at some gym there and was like, I want to be the best in the world, I probably would have gone to Atos and like probably gone down the big gi pathway. It wasn't like a deliberate thing. It was more of like proximity. Like, okay, I'm right here in New York. Like, these guys are at like my instructor's home gym. Like, I should just go here and train with them. And
so today, a lot of students have a choice of going into a no-gi grappling academy route or going more traditional gi academy route. How should that determination be made for somebody who has never done jiu-jitsu? I mean, that choice didn't exist, even for you. Like Matt Serra, you said there was one time in a week and everything was gi. Like,
it's actually funny. We get people that come in that have never grappled before, and they're like, I only want to do no-gi. Like,
I know.
I get those calls weekly.
And I'm like, well, why? I was like, have you ever trained? They're like, no, but I just want to do no-gi.
Well,
I've had
do you think
kids say that? Like, little kid won't do the classes because he doesn't want to do gi.
But do you think that's a consequence of the popularity of what we are seeing today between UFC and then obviously
absolutely, yeah. But at the same
ADCC
time,
and Golden Ryans?
I do think gi. I think from a business perspective, I think gi caters to a larger percentage of the population. Like, I think it's I mean, look at Masters Worlds. It's like the biggest tournament in the world, right? 8,000 competitors in it. I think it's just like, I'm not saying like you should pick one or the other. I mean, I think you should do both. I think until you maybe have severe or extreme competitive aspirations, if you have the ability to do both, you should do both. I don't see any reason why not. And I think if you choose to do one or the other and you can't do both, like, that's fine. But they're like, I have students who are like, who only want to do no-gi, and I'm like, you missed the potential to train this like today because you didn't want to do gi, which I think is
but this does happen, doesn't it? It's like, I want to train more. There are classes here, but they are gi. I don't want to come to those.
Yeah. What do you tell those people?
I tell them I think it's ridiculous, honestly. I mean, because you're like, I don't have a specific person in mind when I say this, but it's like most of those people, I'll say this: if they're like because if you're over a blue belt, like we have advanced gi class, no-gi classes every day. So if you want to train no-gi every day at my gym, you can at an advanced level. If you're a beginner, our fundamentals classes, we don't let the beginners do the advanced class, of course. Like there's classes you can take every single day, and you can't do no-gi every day, but you can do no-gi a lot of days. But there's also gi classes, so we kind of will put like as many gi and no-gi classes for the beginners, so they kind of have that option. But people will like not come on the, like you said, not come on the gi days because I don't want to do gi, I only want to do no-gi. But if you just came to the gi class as a white belt, that is going to benefit you nearly as much as coming to the no-gi class if your goal is to do no-gi, because you're just getting more mat time, more grappling time. There's so much crossover between the two. Yeah, it's not exactly the same, and at the very highest level, I think you rarely see people who can do both. There's a few people, but it's rare that you can do both. But at the white belt, blue belt level, do both. If it means between not training and training, do the one you don't want to do, because it's going to absolutely still help.
At which point do you think that determination, or not determination, but the decision comes in where you have to select one versus the other?
Are you describing from like a competitive standpoint?
Well, a moment ago you said like you white belt, you blue belt, you should do both of them. When you want to be a little bit more advanced and you're reaching out into the higher levels, then unlikely you're going to be good at both of them. Like you need to focus on one or the other.
So when I say high
right?
level, I mean at like I think 95% of people, if they train and get a black belt, they can be good in both gi and no gi. I think if you're somebody who's trying to compete in ADCC or someone who's trying to win the IBJJF Worlds, like at the highest level, I think it's helpful to specialize in one.
So essentially you're referring to semi-professionals.
Yeah, semi-professional or professional athletes. I think you want to specialize.
Which excludes 99% of the population.
Yeah, of course. So I think for most people, I'm not saying you have to train both, but if you're at a gym and you want to train every day and you have the option to train no-gi every day, I mean, don't put the gi on if you don't want to. I don't think it's going to mess up your grappling. But if you're missing training when you want to train because the preferred option is not available to you, I think you're missing out. And I would just go train in your less preferred gi or no-gi option.
Let me ask you a somewhat controversial question. I'll put you on the spot here. Some do think that gi will disappear at some point of time.
I don't think so. Maybe on the professional scene it will be. I mean, I can't see the IBJJF going away. I mean, maybe in 20 or 30 years, but I don't think it's going to disappear. But I think more athletes are going to gravitate towards no-gi because there's more financial payouts. There's there's just bigger tournaments in the no-gi scene than in the gi, and I think it's going to continue to move in that direction. But I don't think it's going to disappear entirely.
Why do you think things have shifted towards no-gi? Why do you think the payouts, the support, the sponsorship, why do you think that happens in no-gi versus gi?
I think because of I might be wrong on this, but I think because of the connection with mixed martial arts. So I think Jiu-Jitsu has, I don't want to say piggybacked, but has potentially piggybacked off of MMA and the UFC. So people that like are maybe not like Jiu-Jitsu practitioners themselves, but are potentially watching these events, like it's much easier to digest the no-gi grappling than it is the gi grappling.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like, okay, like this is no-gi, I understand this. Not to say you wouldn't understand the gi positions, but then things start to get meta a little bit. You're not like really sure what you're watching. I think because of that connection with mixed martial arts and specifically the UFC, I think that has helped no-gi grappling
and the entertainment factor I think is a little bit higher with no-gi, like a little bit faster, a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, I agree.
A little bit more physical, right?
Yeah, a little bit more physical, faster, more dynamic. Yeah, absolutely. Not to say it's like less or more technical, which I don't think is true. I think they're both.
No, I don't think it's less technical. I think it's more entertaining.
I think it it's more entertaining. I think it favors like more athleticism than the gi does.
Yeah. As humans, we are definitely the drama junkies. We want things to be happening. Otherwise,
It's the same in the UFC. People like. Excuse me, my dogs are barking. But people like. Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to ask you what kind of dog do you have. I got
two
distracted.
dogs. I have American Bulldog and then just like a red-nosed pit bull. They're
Nice,
sitting there right
nice.
at the top of the stairs crying at me right now. But
we got distracted.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
I don't know what we were talking about.
Gi versus no gi.
Well,
So yeah, go ahead.
you were talking really about like, just it being more of a spectator sport towards the end of it. And,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I'm sure you guys experience this too. I get people inquiring to my gym that say like, what made you interested in trying jiu-jitsu? They're like, I watched ADCC, or like I watched like the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, stuff like that. And those are obviously no-gi events. And I think like going back to what we said before, someone comes in and wants to do no-gi, they like have maybe watched it in some way, watched MMA or watched one of these events, and they're like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to do gi. I think that's stupid. Or even though obviously half these guys do the gi as well, but they don't know that going in, and they just kind of make an assumption and assume that's like the better option to do.
Let's switch here a little bit. Let's take this moment to kind of pivot this into you. I think what's one of the interesting things about you is that as I've seen you grapple and as I've been reading and kind of getting ready for this conversation, you love submissions. You love the finish. And well, why? Why is that the point of such a high interest, such a high drive within the grappling, the game of grappling? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna use a John Danaher quote, like, jiu-jitsu or grappling is control that leads to submission. I feel like it's kind of the essence of what the sport is, right? I mean, to me, when I first started, like that was like the exciting thing was the submission, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like we know, like it's not just about submissions; it's about like positional control, like like your guard play is extremely important, your guard pass is extremely important, your positioning is very important, but like that's kind of I don't want to say the exciting part. It's not the only exciting part, but that's to me like the essence of what the sport is being able to submit someone else, and there's no ambiguity with a submission. Like it's clear cut. That person tapped out, like you won the match.
At the same time, when we are starting this in the first year or two, I think everybody wants that submission. Everybody chases that adrenaline dump, that dopamine rush, of submitting your partner. Yet, our success often is low because we don't have the control. We make these mistakes and we hyper focus on this end result, our partner tapping, versus having all these prerequisites in place. And I feel like oftentimes that's not a mistake, but I think misleading kind of a path for many starting students, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you constantly hear the term like position before submission, and I think someone that's like a good submission artist, they understand that like there's a difference between the position when you're actually finishing somebody with a submission and the position to control a person like leading up to that submission. Like for example, like I'll use an armbar position, like an armbar, like a classic armbar with the person, you on top, person on their back, like you're sitting in an armbar position, or Jiu-Jitsu is a pin first and then it's a submission. They're not one and the same. So like most submissions require you to like limit your opponent's movement first, like pin them in place, and then you can apply the submission. So even though it may appear like you're not getting like the traditional like macro positions in jiu-jitsu where you sweep, pass the guard, mount, take the back, choke the person, but you are controlling the person, but just in a way that leads towards a submission. And I'm speaking with like a lot of leg lock positions or guard submissions. Like you're not taking the traditional pathway, but you are controlling the person, limiting their movement, and then like moving into your submission.
Well, I think what you're describing is if you're not controlling somebody, they will escape. I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah,
like no matter how good your submission are, without control, they're just going to slip out one way or another, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Because ultimately that's their objective too, to defend and escape, right? So why do you think that so many of us at the beginning of this, the first year or two, we so hyper focus on that result? We hyper focus on getting that tap versus really mastering was really truly important.
Yeah, I think a lot of I mean, I'm sure it's in many things like where there's many levels to it. Like I think the beginner doesn't see all the other aspects of what's happening. They see the submission, they see the end result. Okay, that person got a triangle, but they don't see the 4, 5, 6 steps before that are actually leading to the trial. So they focus on, okay, that's the triangle. Like, let me get the triangle. But then there's many other things that lead into that particular submission. And obviously your instructor will teach you those things, and you learn those things. But like when watching someone, I think that becomes the focus, because that's like the knockout punch, right? Like, oh, he hit him with the right hand, but there's there could have been many other things that led to that happening, and it's the same way in this, obviously.
Well, we don't know. Simple as that.
Of course.
We just got to keep learning this, huh?
I will say, like, especially with the prevalence of ADCC, for myself and for my coaching, like there is a much bigger emphasis on traditional, like, positional control, because based on the ADCC rules, like no one's going to win ADCC submitting everyone, although people certainly have. Like, it's just it's less submission heavy, and obviously if you submit the person, that's great, but it's less submission heavy and more focus on wrestling, guard passing, like specifically taking the back, defending your back from turtle. Like the rule set is quite different than most other tournaments, so it kind of changes the way you're training. Versus like when I first started training with the Henzo, with the Danaher Death Squad, the big tournament was EBI. So like submission defense. It didn't matter if you got your guard pass. It didn't matter if you got your back taken. You had to be able to defend your back, in overtime, or defend the armbar, and then finish from those positions. And then also be able to submit, like, however the result of the match was going. So that was like the big tournament. It was like, we want to get into EBI. And then everything has changed. It's completely different. Now it's ADCC. There's a big shift in like the training methodologies and the focus of what you're trying to do.
Isn't this a fascinating part of this art, this sport, that the rule set dictates the environment and what you do and how you do it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a big impediment to jiu-jitsu growing is the lack of like a consistent rule set. I mean, I think it's very interesting that there are like 4 or 5 major rule sets, and depending on what competition you're doing, you're obviously changing the preparation for those rule sets. But I mean, I do think from a fan's perspective, it makes it hard to understand.
I mean, I don't know if jiu-jitsu is the only sport, but definitely one of handful that has so many rule sets under the one umbrella of the existence, right? Like you look at, I don't know, soccer, swimming, football, basketball. Basketball has 2 different rule sets, European and US, or like, I get that part, but like I feel like in jiu-jitsu there is, I think 5. You're being very, very conservative. I think there's way more than 5 rules.
I mean, I would say the major, but yeah. I mean, you have like combat jiu-jitsu, you have EBI rules, you have ADCC, IBJJF. I mean, you got
but you reach into Europe, and they got their own thing going.
I know.
It's almost like everybody's trying to create their own thing, you know, and I don't know, like I don't like comparing jiu-jitsu to judo, but I think one of the points of success of judo is that is unified. Or like no matter where you go, is the same.
It's the same rules. I mean, and that drastically changes like like you could tell if a guy is like a sub-only competitor versus like an IBJJF.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even like in training, like if I'm rolling, like, okay, I got an EBI match coming up and you have a IBJJF match coming up, like, and we're training together, it doesn't even make sense. Like, what I'm going for, what you're going for, like, it's not conducive. Like,
no, it's your objectives are completely. You are in different universes. Yeah,
completely different. It would be nice if there was some type of, there's no governing body really. I mean, the IBJJF kind of tries to do that, but there's enough. People have enough problems with them that's probably not going to pan out.
Do you think it'll get watered down though if there's only one rule set?
What do you mean by that? Like,
well, that people will only be training for that rule set.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because so for example, like I think there's, like, for example, EBI rules. Like, a lot of people hate them. They're not my favorite rule set, but like I think there's there's a lot of technique in being able to control someone's back, escape the armbar. Like you could teach, for hours on how to get out of the armbar position. And if you were looking to win ADCC, like I would spend almost no time. It's not that important. Like if someone's taking your back in ADCC, you probably lost the match already, right? So, I mean, I think you do bring up a good point. I do think certain not techniques or certain types of things would potentially not be taught as much from a competition perspective because you're not trained for those things. But I do think it would push the publicity of the sport further. So it's a balancing act, I guess.
And then again, all of this is not really applicable to 99% of the population. So like we have to also acknowledge the fact that the average Joe Schmo or every casual training person probably is not going to be learning the EBI rules or ADCC rules. Like they're going to be training something almost completely different and under the same umbrella. No.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think, like, speaking of, like, going back to what you said, they kind of just train to train, right? I think most people, like, that are not looking at competition are kind of just training to, whether it's within the constraints of the positional training they're doing in their class, or they're just rolling with the person and trying to submit them. So going back to, like, what you talked about, why do I like the submission? Like, it's kind of the essence of the sport. Like, and I think when sub only came around, it was like, there's no points, no rules. You just try to submit the person, and whoever submits the person wins. I think that kind of resonated with a lot of people because they, maybe they didn't come from a traditional competition gym that was focused on IBJJF rules. And I think if you don't come from that type of gym, it can be very hard to do well in IBJJF competition because, like, the training style is so different. But then, like, you have these people who may very well be very good at jiu-jitsu, but don't have the game to win IBJJF. But then the sub only comes around, and that really resonates with them. They're like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to submit the person. Like, I'm not trying to pass their guard and hold them, and then, like, stall the rest of the match and win. I think you saw, like, a big divide when that first happened because I think that sub only resonated with a lot of people because, like you said, they're not thinking about competition. They're thinking about just trying to submit their partner when they go to class every day. And I think that kind of, spoke to a lot of people when that kind of came around, and maybe made people who were not interested in competition more interested in competing when that first started being popular.
It's definitely a puzzle for many as we continue watching this and then we continue training this. I mean, who knows what this is going to look like in 20, 30, 40 years when all of us are wearing wheelchairs and we're kind of sitting back.
Hopefully not. But
hopefully not.
Most likely.
Jason, we've been at this for over an hour. Before we start wrapping this up, well, what we do at the end of every episode, we have a question from you from our previous guest.
Sure.
But he had no idea that you're going to answer it. So think of it as question completely in blind. Gator's going to take a lead on this, but always creates an interesting end to the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this today. But Eric Acha's question is, what's your favorite gi?
Type of gi?
Yeah.
My first gi was an Atama double weave.
Oh yeah, does Atama even exist?
I don't know. I had a blue Atama gold weave. Let me think for a second. I liked.
Let me rephrase this question. How many gis do you have?
I have a lot of gis actually. I have a whole. I wonder if my wife can hear this, but I have a whole drawer. Because when I worked at Serra's, like I would keep all my clothes at the gym, and at this point I do that now, but I don't have like as much room as I had. But I had like, I don't know, 30 gis, so like a ridiculous amount of gis. And like I have a drawer just like packed with gis right now. I like gameness a lot. I had a guy when I was coming up, he like owned like an MMA like supply website that sold like jiu-jitsu stuff, and he would like give me gameness gis a lot, and I always kind of liked them. Because I would wear them a lot, but I don't really have a favorite. I don't really have a favorite gi.
Does it really matter? I mean, like, does it really like it like in the grand scheme of things? Some people are very particular about their gis and about what they wear, how they wear it. But does it really matter?
I mean, if you're competing like an IBJJF, you got to weigh in with the gi on. You definitely don't want the heavy Atama double weave gi. It weighs like 8 pounds. But it doesn't matter that
But
much.
those are awesome. You're not getting choked in that
You're
thing.
not getting choked in that.
No,
No,
that collar is like steel collar.
It's gonna go over your chin, but
I was getting yelled at yesterday because of my collar. It's too thick, and I was like, I don't know. It keeps me safe.
yeah.
Have you ever heard of Howard Lugie's? I don't know if they exist anymore,
No.
but this is going way back to like 2000s, early 2000s. It might be even before your time. But I remember he made. I think it was like triple weave. And it was it was like literally 7 or 8 pounds, and with literally when I couldn't put it in the dryer. Like it had to, it was so thick, it was standing on its own. Like,
oh my God,
you're not getting submitted in that. No. And then the downfall is on a hot day, you were freaking
It's terrible.
2 minutes into a warm up and you're like dripping everywhere.
drenched. Yeah, yeah. I haven't.
But anyway, the good stories of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right.
Jason, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Of course.
What,
Thank you.
what a phenomenal story, life story. What a phenomenal, story of success. I mean, it's always great to see, as we talk to many people at this point, but as we talk to different individuals, it's very refreshing for me to see somebody who's worked hard for many, many years, and now they are building something on their own, and that's exactly what you're doing. So I appreciate everything you've done for jiu-jitsu. I appreciate you being here, and continue doing. We'll be sitting, on the sidelines and watching you continue growing and growing the business. Gary?
Yeah, I always love when somebody who's more competition or seemingly more competition focused comes in with these unique perspectives on running an academy or the hobbyist and stuff. So I think people are going to have a lot to take away from today.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Yeah, guys, thank you for having me. Great chat. I always like sharing my story. Hopefully it inspires someone who maybe is in a similar but similar, start to jiu-jitsu that I had, and inspires them to maybe try to make something out of it for themselves. So,
Jason, if anybody wants to connect with you, are you available on social media, websites? Where can anybody find you?
Yeah, so you can go on my Instagram. It's Jason Rao BJJ89. I'm pretty good with answering messages on that. You can check out my academy website, VanguardJJ.com. You can message us through there or email us through there, and I'll respond to that as well. If you're ever in New York or on Long Island, I'm not that close to New York City. I'm about an hour east of it, but anyone's welcome to come down and train in my academy. I'd love to have you.
Cool. Awesome. We'll include all the links in the show notes as we always do. So if you guys want to connect with Jason directly or you want to visit his academy, feel free to do so. I highly, highly encourage it. Jason, one more time, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. And, keep on training.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
All right. Thanks, man. Peace.
Later.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.